Hi there, my name's Bryony Pearce and I write dark and thrilling stories for young adults. The dark side of the soul is something that I've always been interested in. From the age of 9, when I used to hide in the playground and tell horror stories to the other children, right up to the present day where I've just finished writing Raising Hell, an urban fantasy for teenagers. As a kid, I was the one who was always reading about Aztec sacrifices and real life unsolved mysteries and spontaneous human combustion, Jack the Ripper, that sort of thing. And that kind of fascination with the darkness in the human soul has grown with me. I found out about the Milgram experiment when I wrote my first novel, Angel's Fury, and that made me absolutely fascinated by the idea that perfectly normal, apparently good people could do absolutely awful things given the right or wrong circumstances. So when I write, I explore that idea of man as monster. And in Raising Hell, although Ivy has to deal with zombies, hellhounds, ghosts, she also has to deal with the very real and much more terrifying monsters that live inside the people that she comes to deal with. So I'd like to read you a little bit from the opening of my new novel, Raising Hell, out in June. It was the Goths you had to watch out for. Not that they were any more likely to snap than anyone else, at least in my experience. In fact, they seemed to have a healthy outlet for all that angst. But they tended to hide among the Goths, in plain sight. I stopped checking out the notice board, someone was selling what looks like a decent second-hand laptop, and turned my attention towards the little group walking through the metal detector. What should a group of Goths be called? A flock? A herd? I remembered the old joke about a murder of crows. A murder of Goths? No, not right. A slaughter, perhaps. A slaughter of Goths. I shifted Matilda on my hip. I hated having to carry a huge machete, especially in my old school. Every morning when I approached the entrance, I was reminded of simpler times when a low grade or a surprise test seemed the worst things that could happen. Then I'd reach the new security measures and tell myself only a fool dealt with Goths without being fully armed. First through was a boy. Black hair, obviously, pale makeup and bruised-looking eyes that remained dull as he looked me over. Even though I'd only been in the job a couple of months, I'd already become part of the scenery. He sloped past, following the preppy-looking trio that had preceded him, bag dangling from one shoulder like an overripe fruit. He wore an earbud and nodded along to a tune only he could hear. A slight smile raised the corners of my lips. I knew him, although he wouldn't remember me. I'd been in the same classes as his older brother a few years ago. Behind him, a pair of overweight girls, new to the look, makeup too carefully applied, hair recently dyed and inexpertly, like they'd used boot polish on it. Black jeans, not yet frayed, layered tops, grateful to sink into the colour. They giggled, hadn't yet got the style of careless rebellion. I nodded at the closer of the two as she looked me over, nervous eyes going first to Matilda, then to the mirror, flare, Bible, lighter, and canister of holy water that were tucked into my flak vest. As I shifted my stance, the little bell on the other side of my belt jingled. I sighed at the Christmassy sound, but fortunately, in this case, size genuinely didn't matter. Still, perhaps I should invest in something slightly lower down the tonal scale. Wannabe goth girl lowered her gaze and clutched her friend's arm. They whispered, both stared at me and then at the floor, then they were gone. What had scared them the most, I wondered? Was it the equipment that reminded them of my job? Or was it that I looked like Nancy Drew on a bad hair day? Slight frame, big brown eyes. I appeared more curious than uncompromising and was no one's idea of an ass kicker. Perhaps they were worried that I wouldn't be able to protect them when the time came. Not if, when. I had no illusions about my role here. It was to put my body between kids not that much longer than I was, and the inevitable. So there you go, that's the opening of Raising Hell, and Ivy is about to encounter a witch and some hellhounds, which are going to make her day a whole lot worse. I hope that you enjoy reading it, and thank you very much for listening. Bye.